Good evening, America, and welcome to the Monday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, from the nation's capital and the wiredtofishcoffee.com studios. You know, this Wired to Fish coffee is the official coffee of Just the News. It's the official coffee of the Solomon family. We love it. It's our #1 coffee now. If you want to go right now to Wired, the #2fishcoffee.com, and get a fantastic 10% discount on all of their great blends, as well as the cool mugs, the Just the News mug. Go check that out. It's really awesome. All you have to do is use the promo code JustNews at checkout. So wiredtofishcoffee.com, Just News at checkout. All right, we start this Easter week with a lot of wonderful weather and some good feelings from the weekend, but some somber news. Pope Francis passed away earlier today after suffering a stroke, just a day after meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance and giving a special blessing in Rome. He was 88 years old and served as the leader of the Catholic Church. Since 2013, Francis had been battling health problems for some time, but he insisted on staying busy right to the very end, as he did yesterday on Easter Sunday. Today, accolades poured in from all around the globe, including from President Donald Trump, who ordered U.S. flags to fly at half-staff, and also, he announced, the president did, he will attend the Pope's funeral. We'll take a deeper dive into the legacy of Francis and the changes he brought to the Catholic Church in just a bit. Meanwhile, we're going to turn to some important news in Washington. There are signs that long-awaited accountability efforts may be ramping up. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, just a few minutes ago, referred former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo for prosecution by the Trump Justice Department, alleging that Cuomo made numerous false statements to Congress during its probe into his handling of COVID-19 and his failures to protect nursing home patients during the pandemic. On another front, separate front, Just the News reported this morning that the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., President Trump's choice, Ed Martin, sent a letter last week to a former member of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's team, taking a closer look at the targeting and conviction of former Trump aide George Papadopoulos in the now discredited Russia collusion case. That'd be the first real meaningful investigation in quite some time for those who pursued the Russia collusion case. The letter to Aaron Zelensky, an ex-Mueller prosecutor who left DOJ after Trump won in November, raised questions about Zelensky's statement in court concerning the Papadopoulos case, as well as some work he did teaching at a Communist China Party-linked law school in China a decade ago. Now, those are two pretty big things. Now, we should note that both men, Zelensky and Cuomo, both deny any wrongdoing. All right, time to bring in my amazing co-host, Amanda Head from Los Angeles this week. Amanda, what are you tracking on the news headline front?
Hello, John. Yes, good to see you, and happy Easter to everybody. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. You know, John, I think that there's got to be an enterprising travel agency out there who is starting to specialize in trips down to El Salvador, because after Chris Van Hollen went last week, now we have a delegation of Democrats who headed down there. We had Maxwell Frost of Florida. We had Maxine Dexter of Oregon, Yasmin Ansari of Arizona, Robert Garcia of California, and they decided to go down there. And Maxwell Frost had something to say regarding what could happen to American citizens, considering what has happened to the El Salvadorian who was deported back home. Check it out.
The fact of the matter is it was their administration, when all this started, that admitted that they made a mistake in court documents, speaking to the Supreme Court, that they made a mistake. That's the whole reason this decision was handed down. They're trying to appeal things left and right. But the fact of the matter is right now, they are not obeying a Supreme Court decision. And everyone should be very concerned about this. Of course, this is a constitutional crisis, but also this is going to have real impact for people across the country. The reason I'm here is because this impacts my constituents. The Donald Trump in the Oval Office talked about the fact that next he wants to go for quote unquote homegrowns. He's talking about U.S. citizens.
Oh, John, that is quite the stretch to go from President Trump is deporting alleged MS-13 gang members to he's going to start deporting U.S. citizens and sending them down to El Salvador prison. John, I'm kind of in the camp of people who says, you know, if you skip the line, if you jumped due process coming into this country, I'm not really sure that it's in America's best interest to follow due process to get you out.
Yeah, it's just amazing watching this strategy. They're doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on something that most Americans think is the right thing to do, which is to deport illegal aliens, particularly those who are suspected of having unsavory ties or criminal ties or ties to gangs. And so I don't know where it's going to end up, but the Democrats don't seem to be winning a lot of points on that. We'll see where that finishes up. All right, we're very lucky to be joined this afternoon by, for the first time, I think, from the great state of Indiana, Congresswoman Houchin. Congresswoman, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great honor. All right, let me just start off. When a leader of Pope Francis's extraordinary import passes away, the world takes note. Just your thoughts on Francis's legacy and the sort of discussion the world's been having today.
Yeah, what a blessing. I think Cardinal Dolan said it best. You could not have choreographed a better exit. Having this in such close proximity to Easter, I had the opportunity to meet Pope Francis in Italy at the Vatican a couple of years ago. Just a great teacher, a great leader, and we certainly mourn with the rest of the Catholic faith in his passing.
Yeah, very neat.
Congresswoman, I want to get to something that we flicked at the top, and that is your Democrat colleagues heading down to El Salvador. There's a lot of business that needs to be attended to, and I understand it's the weekend and you're not in session over the weekend or even this week. However, I have to think that there are more pressing issues than going down to El Salvador to bring back an illegal immigrant who has now been, I think, twice confirmed by courts to be an alleged MS-13 gang member.
Yeah, honestly, I hope all the Democrats start going down to El Salvador to advocate on behalf of MS-13 gang members instead of taking care of their own constituents. This is really kind of a ridiculous issue. Some of these people, Chris Van Hollen going down there, did not pay the same respect for the family of Rachel Morin. House Republicans are going to be focused on continuing to secure the border, supporting President Trump in these efforts to make America safe again. And quite frankly, it gives us time to focus on what the American people want us to. I cannot imagine being a member of a party that prioritizes MS-13 gang members over their own citizens, but that's exactly what we're seeing out of the out-of-touch Democrat Party. So as long as they get back to work when we have to go back to Washington next week to start the reconciliation process, I think they should all go down there and spend their time with MS-13 gang members instead of their own constituents.
Yeah, it's the best possible ad Republicans could have, Democrats doing your work for you. It's just amazing. Congresswoman, I want to talk a little bit more about one of the roadblocks in the efforts to get the immigration crisis solved quicker, and that's the federal courts. These Democrat-appointed judges, even though they keep getting slapped down by the Supreme Court or appellate courts, they keep sticking their foot out and tripping up President Trump. Takes a few weeks. Is there a momentum in Congress to get the Senate to do what the House has already done, which is pass some reform that stops individual judges from enjoining an entire nation?
Yeah, I supported the No Rogue Rulings Act that was passed out of the House, authored by my friend Darrell Issa of California. We have to have something that prevents these rogue activist judges from actually taking a higher priority in their decisions over the President of the United States, even on national security matters. So this the No Rogue Rulings Act will prevent nationwide injunctions from rogue activist judges. I do hope the Senate will, with urgency, take this up. And that some Democrats will come on board. These activist judges are making these decisions that, again, put them above the President of the United States. We cannot have that happen. And so I do hope that the Senate will rapidly take this up and we will get it passed into law.
Yeah, so important.
Well, and I know that that's something will definitely help Republican numbers, but I was covering a poll this morning by Rasmussen that shows that Republicans took a 7-point hit and Democrats are now 4 points ahead when it comes to the generic ballot, that voters across this country would rather vote for the Democrat in their district than the Republican. So where is the hole in the messaging? Because somewhere Americans aren't getting the message.
Well, we struggle with that. The Democrats do have a very long tail of the media, and they end up sending their talking points out, and they are repeated and repeated and repeated. And as Republicans, we have a very big tent. So we've got Republicans that won in districts where Joe Biden won or Kamala Harris won by 15 points. And we've got Republicans in districts where Donald Trump won by 30 points. And so trying to keep all of those people together with one cohesive message is a challenge. But one of the things that we do have, I think, on our side is we do have more and more media who are helping us tell the true story of what's actually happening. We have seen over and over again that the Democrats do not tell the truth And when they don't tell the truth and the media repeats those things that aren't true, it creates a problem. But what we learned in the last election, and I hope we will ramp up here in the midterms, is that 77 million Americans no longer believe the Democrat Party and their rhetoric, nor should they. People really need to educate themselves, because what the Democrat Party is doing today is absolutely obfuscating the truth, trying to stir people up and make them upset at a time when we can least afford to do so.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it really is an entire subterfuge campaign that goes on every day. The media, a big part of that, legacy media at least. I want to talk a little bit about the signs in the economy, because there are really hopeful signs in the economy. There's downward pressure in inflation, upward excitement about hiring. Obviously, the tariffs have roiled the markets. What's the key thing that Congress can do to assist President Trump to get trade deals in place and get sort of a stability in the markets that would reflect the true nature of an economy that looks like it's getting better?
Thank you. Yes. I mean, we have seen $3 trillion of investment since Trump's tariff plan has been announced. We have Guardian Bikes in my district that just announced a $19 million investment to manufacture bikes 100% made in the USA. 97% of that work is now done in China. We're bringing that back to the United States. We also have Honda, Eli Lilly, making historic investments in the state of Indiana. And this is operating, I think, just exactly as President Trump would hope that it would. It's great to see. One of the things Congress can do is pass the reconciliation bill, which extends the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, to give us that stability moving forward, so the business community understands what their tax structure might look like for the next decade plus. We're also looking at things like tax credits for sourced in America. We are looking at a 15% made in America manufacturing corporate tax rate. These are all things that will add to our stability, give business the peace of mind necessary to go ahead and keep reshoring all the work that we can do. You know, America has been ripped off for decades. We have been on the wrong end of unfair trade deals. We have been a consumption country. President Trump is trying to bring us back to a production country. Ultimately, it's going to be very good for the United States. I do think it will bring a golden age back to America of manufacturing. And we need to do, as Congress, we need to do everything we can to support that by creating stability in the tax code.
Yeah, important stuff.
And I mean, it's so many common sense ideas. I think Americans look at what Republicans are trying to do and they think to themselves, yeah, heck yeah, why haven't we done that before? Every member of Congress that we speak to on this program, they have their favorite areas when it comes to cutting spending, the low-hanging fruit, the stuff that just, when you look at the budget, it just jumps off the page at you. And I know you're no different. Tell us some of your favorite areas to slash it.
Well, hey, I want to get rid of these EV mandates. I want to get rid of the EV mandates and the EV tax credits. I definitely want to see those go away. We shouldn't force a industry when the American people nor the grid are ready for it. So that's something that I think is ripe for repeal. But everything that DOJ is finding with waste, fraud, and abuse, it's really shocking the amount of waste, fraud, and abuse that has been found in the system by DOJ. So I'm eager to take what we can substantiate from that and make those cuts where it's necessary. I mean, we're finding that people on Medicare and Social Security have died, yet are still getting benefits. And those are some of the things that I think should be easy for Democrats to get on board with. And we hope that they'll join us in these efforts, because honestly, if we do not protect these programs through this wasteful, fraudulent, and abusive spending, if we don't fix these issues with the cost of Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, it won't be there for the future. Republicans are fighting to protect it by reforming it and making it work for the American people moving forward.
Congresswoman, real quick, we got less than a minute. Democrats are demagoguing on the elimination of the education department. You gave one of the most brilliant video responses I've seen explaining why it makes sense to everyday Americans in middle America. Just give us your top line thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's no need for the Federal Department of Education. It was created under the Carter administration. It was created by Congress. It can be taken away. We need control back in the hands of our states, to our local communities, to our parents. The best government is the government closest to the people. We don't need the Federal Department of Education to do any of the things that it has done. Ever since Ronald Reagan was president, we've been trying to do this. I really hope that we succeed under President Trump. I think we are. There's no reason that we should have the federal government telling states what to do. States and parents know best how to educate kids, and we need to turn it back to them.
Yeah, no doubt. And I know you're on the forefront of doing that. Congresswoman Erin Houchin, what a great honor to have you on the show today. Happy Easter Monday. Thanks for being with us.
Happy Easter to you too. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. What a great conversation. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk to another Catholic member of the House, Congresswoman Miller-Meeks, on Pope Francis's passing and what it means for the future of the Catholic Church. We'll have that right after these messages. Hey folks, if you're a homeowner, you need to listen to this. When's the last time you checked on your home title? I know the answer. That's the legal proof, of course, that you own your house. If you're like me, the answer is never. The problem is, in today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles and your equity is the target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee with your county, and boom, your home title has been transferred out of your name. That's not a good situation. Then they take out loans using your equity or even sell your property, and you're not even going to know about it until you get a collection or foreclosure notice. That's why you need to stop what you're doing and find out today if you're already a victim. Use the promo code JTN at HometitleLock.com to make sure your title is still in your name. You also get a free title history report plus a free 14-day trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud should happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Go to HometitleLock.com right now and use the promo code JTN. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code JTN.
Welcome back, everybody. The world's over 1 billion Catholics learned of the news and are now mourning the news of the passing of the head of the church, Pope Francis, at 88 years old, and now sets in motion a centuries-old process to select a new pontiff. So here to talk about that, as well as the business of Congress, the great Congresswoman from Iowa, Mariannette Miller-Meeks. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here.
Delighted to be with you both.
Yeah.
You know, the Pope, he put on a brave face. You know, he had failing health, but this last week he participated in some Holy Week festivities, and then passed this morning. And I know that the Catholics across the globe are mourning that. Your top line thoughts about it, because I know you're Catholic.
Well, first and foremost, I think it's so hopeful and inspirational given last week and the Holy Thursday, Holy Friday, Holy Saturday, and then Sunday. Which, the entire process of Holy Week is about eternal life and faith and hope. It happens during springtime, which is the physical, natural embodiment of that. And so for the Pope to be able to participate in Holy Week and then to give an address for Easter, it kind of gives you chills almost, the significance of that. And then to pass away, it was almost as if he lived long enough to be able to deliver this Easter message, always of humility and caring for the vulnerable and compassion, just as Jesus had done. So I think it was, so becoming and so fitting that this would happen. We know that he has been in failing health. We actually didn't know if he would make it to Easter. And so for Catholics, for those who to see the pontiff, the head of the church, to be able to give an address and then pass away, I think is very befitting.
Yeah. Such a remarkable legacy, too. The first pope from the Americas, a pope that clearly made a lot of changes to the church, saw a significant growth to the church. As history will look back at his tenure, how do you think history will regard him as a leader of the church and also his role in the world?
Well, I think first and foremost, as you said, he came from Buenos Aires. So to come from, South America, from Latin America, to be a Jesuit, to then be in the Vatican, the first pope from the Americas, I think in many ways that in and of itself was transformative and a legacy. his conversations about compassion and humility and caring for the vulnerable, very much in the way that Jesus himself would have done. His use of social media, so he brought the church into a new era. And so his use of social media, interacting with individuals at a different level in a different place, I think that also is going to be part of his legacy that he left. And then recently, as you know, he met with Vice President J.D. Vance. Also a person of faith, a person who converted to the Catholic faith. I think that was also very meaningful given his frail health that he would meet with the vice president. And so I think that's going to be part of his legacy. There are going to be others who said he didn't do enough when it came to to the scourge of the church, when it came to young children and to addressing those issues. But I really think the fact that he interacted with the world in a different way, was able to grow the church, I think is extraordinarily important.
Yeah.
Congresswoman, President Trump ordered flags to be down at half staff for the Pope's passing, which is, I think, a wonderful and very respectful gesture. But there were a lot of issues that I think rubbed some Catholics wrong, especially in the social space. And they are looking for a Pope, the next Pope, to be someone to lead maybe in a more traditional direction. Do you get that feeling as well?
Certainly, when I was in church over the weekend, and then on Friday, that is the sense I get from Catholics, although they, respect, number one, the pontiff, the head of the church, his background, where he came from, his messages on many things, the assistance he had in transforming the church and bringing it into this new era. They also want to have someone who is strong in the traditional values of the church, and so I sense that in church. I sense that among young people as well. And so I think that it's always interesting how the Pope is decided. We don't know who that's going to be or where they're going to be from. But I think that people are looking for someone who is staunchly enmeshed in the Catholic faith and Catholic traditions and Catholic teachings.
Yeah. And there's a deep bench in the College of Cardinals, and a lot of them picked by Francis. It'll be really interesting to see where the conclave ultimately ends up. Congressman, I want to shout you out because you have worked tirelessly in Congress to solve the issue of prescription drug prices, the drug act, all the things that you've been doing. On Thursday, I was thinking of you when the president signed that executive order and got to the heart of the PBM issue. Talk a little bit about how important that is and how Congress can now follow up on it.
This is critically important. The president has really been a leader on this issue as well. I mean, when he had his first healthcare pricing transparency back in 2018, I was there at the White House for the signing of that executive order. So I think this has been something he's long been working towards. There are a lot of very entrenched special interests when it comes to PBM reform. My goal is not to end pharmacy benefit managers or the work that they do in helping to get prescriptions to people. However, it is to bring transparency to a very opaque middle area in between the pharmaceutical company that manufactures medications and the pharmacy that dispenses those medications. There is a lot of money that gets lost in that space, and it's not going to the seniors or to the families or to the mothers who are paying for prescription drugs at the counter. And so I think it was tremendously important. We almost were able to get PBM reform in an end of the year package. Yeah. We're still working hard to be able to do that. In addition to which, there would be cost savings. So my first bill in 2019 on PBM reform in the state of Iowa, I just found out that one of our communities, the county was able to save almost $80,000 by negotiating and going around the PBM. So there are significant cost savings in transparency and in rebates, and how this, very opaque marketplace works. We want transparency. We want pricing transparency. We want competition. And, we want the people that are paying for medications to be able to get the benefit from what they're paying. And so there's still a lot of work to do, and I'm not tired yet. And I've got some good advocates in Congress with Senator Bill Cassidy on the Senate side, but also very importantly, Representative Buddy Carter from Georgia, Representative Diana Harshberger from Tennessee, both who are pharmacists, and then Representative Guthrie, who is the chair of Energy and Commerce. So we're going to keep pushing this. We know that Speaker Johnson is also supportive of what we're doing. So we're going to keep moving forward on this issue because it's important to bring prescription drug prices down. It's critically important to our seniors, to families, whether they're Iowa families or American families, to single moms raising kids or single parents. This is a critically important issue to bring drug prices down.
Yeah. As you're out in your district, because this is a nuance of the economy. It's not necessarily a kitchen table issue, but it definitely contributes to how Americans are feeling about the economy, which is definitely going to come up in the election for midterms. As you're out there in Iowa and you're speaking to constituents, what else are they wanting to see from Republicans to keep the House?
Well, and certainly the things that have been done on the border, deporting criminal illegal aliens is very important. Healthcare cost in general is a topic of conversation. They want to see, they like seeing that there is a move to bring manufacturing back online, but they also know that right now they're seeing some prices come down, but they want to see more jobs and they want to see the economy improve. And so, there's a little bit of a roller coaster right now, which is not unusual when you're making structural changes as we're making, but they want to see things level out, and they want to see that, wages are going up, prices are coming down, and that their quality of life improves.
Iowa Congresswoman and friend of this show, Marionette Miller-Meeks. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Great honor.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody. DEI is still a huge problem in this country and in our Ivy League schools. But one person is writing about all of that so that hopefully it can make a dent. Maybe we can fix it with Dr. Carol Swain next.
Welcome back, America. Joining us now to talk all about the extraordinary developments on DEI, the war that Donald Trump has declared, the progress being made, the rebranding that liberals are already doing at, is former tenured professor at Vanderbilt. She's also the author of a book about the Claudine Gay scandal at Harvard. It's titled The Gay Affair, Harvard Plagiarism and the Death of Academic Integrity. It's a fantastic book. Please read it. It is amazing. Joining us now, our good friend, Dr. Carol Swain. Doctor, good to have you back on.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
All right. So today's been another day in that tit-for-tat war to try to eradicate DEI from the American agenda. Trump administration threatening to pull $1 billion in science funding from Harvard. Harvard sues. Tell us what's going on in the backdrop of this.
Well, the universities are lining up behind Harvard because they're accustomed to doing whatever they want. They believe, just like we've seen people in the previous administration, they believe they're above the law. And I would say that with universities, they don't want accountability. They certainly don't want the government looking at how they're spending government dollars. And I think they're on weak grounds because President Trump's order banning diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and federally that are supported by federal dollars, as well as the executive order, which I think is far more important, banning affirmative action. It ended 60 years of affirmative action. And I believe he's on strong grounds because both DEI and affirmative action, they're part of the same thing. They violate the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, as well as the 1964 Civil Rights Act and its various titles.
Yeah. Dr. Swain, help me understand, because as John alluded to a moment ago, you've got not only universities, but corporations too, who are finding ways of renaming DEI departments and naming the titles of people who are within these departments. So if If it's not popular and they are having to mask it, why keep it? Why be so belligerent about it?
I think a lot of corporations are taking advantage of the opportunity to get rid of DEI, and that they're actually trying to follow the laws of the land that prohibit discrimination because they don't want the lawsuits. And universities will find themselves sued by their employees, students, and faculty who are discriminated against based on their continuing their DEI programs. So yes, they have tried to rename the programs and push them underground, but there are many whistleblowers that are exposing what is taking place. And so it's going to be much harder for them to discriminate in the ways that they did in the past. And they want to pretend that they're noble, that they have the high road, but actually, no. I think they've set back American education at every level.
And you've chronicled it so well in your books and your speeches, this extraordinary drift away from common sense in academia. Are you seeing signs that some in academia are getting the message that they're putting in peril their trust with their core constituency, students and parents, or do you think they're still barreling over a cliff?
No, there are universities that have become more open. In fact, I spoke at one in Oklahoma a few days ago, and universities like Vanderbilt, the conservative students tell me that they're treated much nicer on campus. They have support from the chancellor, they believe, and I have been invited to places to speak that would indicate that there's certainly a thawing, and I believe a realization that they cannot continue with the indoctrination. And one of the things I like to point out is that you cannot be educated unless you are exposed to divergent views. And when colleges and universities become indoctrination mills the way that they have, then it cheats students out of an education. But it's not just that they are indoctrination mills, they're also discriminating. They are breaking the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause that protects all persons, as well as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and its titles. And so they have to be held accountable. Harvard is trying to lead the way, the battle, and it really is a partisan battle because something like 98% of the faculty on these college campuses are Democrats. So it really is Democrats versus Republicans, with Harvard leading the way. And Harvard has not held its faculty accountable for plagiarism. There's some administrators that Chris Rufo identified who were plagiarized. As far as we know, there has been no accountability for faculty, but they hold students accountable if they catch them.
That's a great point.
Dr. Swain, you mentioned this a moment ago. I'm glad you did, because at least for Harvard, about 97% of their professorial staff donates to Democrats. I would love to think that that is an exception. Unfortunately, I do think it is probably the rule. Is that the sense that you get across Ivy League and all universities, really?
Yes, I think so. And I've said this many times that the Christian universities, numerous Christian universities that you would think would be more conservative because of the biblical worldview that you would expect the faculty to have, those places have been infiltrated as well. You can find Marxism there too. And so American education has to be rescued. I am optimistic. I believe that the days of the woke universities are numbered. And I believe that Harvard, can throw all its weight around trying to get sympathy. It deserves no sympathy. If it wants to behave like it is a private university, it needs to stop taking federal dollars. It can be like Hillsdale and do whatever it wants as long as it's not taking federal dollars.
Yeah, it's such a great point. Doctor, we only got about a minute left. I want to ask about this because you do it so brilliantly. People say, well, DEI is just an ideology. What's the harm to it? There is a direct and insidious line between DEI and anti-Semitism. Could you give us the bottom line on that?
Well, the DEI programs encourage colleges and universities to bring in Well, one thing, a lot of foreign students that come from countries that hate Israel, but it has been harmful in that it has privileged some groups over others. And with the Jews, even though Jews are a minority, they have been targeted, throughout history, and certainly on college and university campuses. And one of the things that always astonished me as a university professor is that there were always some leftist Jewish faculty and students that were anti-Semitic themselves. And I found that, just astonishing. But I've also seen people evolve. And I think there are more conservative Jews now than ever before. And they have realized that the left is not their friend at all.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, one thing we do know, you are a friend to truth. You have a brand new book out too, Dr. Swain. Everyone should get this. Diversity Without Discrimination. It's something we should all strive for. What a great book. Be sure everyone to get that. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, great honor to have you on. All right, folks, after the break, more on Pope Francis and his legacy and what's next for the Catholic Church. A lot there, right? With Father Frank Pavone right after these messages.
Welcome back, everybody. As most of you no doubt have already heard, that Pope Francis, at the age of 88 years old, passed away. And of course, millions of Catholics reacting across the globe, including our very own President Trump, reacted to it. He also ordered that flags be lowered to half staff. And despite the fact that he and the Pope have differed on a plethora of issues, including border, capitalism, climate change, a lot of other social issues, still a tremendous amount of respect for him. So with us now, a former Catholic priest who was defrocked by the Vatican after criticizing Democrats for being pro-abortion, a good friend of our program. He's the director of Priests for Life. He's also the national co-chair of Pro-Life Voices for Trump, Father Frank Pavone. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Great to be with you both.
Sir, we spoke to Congresswoman Marionette Miller-Meeks at the top of the show. She's a Catholic, and she reflected back on the legacy of this Pope, and I would like for you to do the same.
You know, first of all, I had the chance to have a good number of interactions with Pope Francis face to face, and we were, of course, discussing my pro-life work. And he was very much a Pope of mercy. He wanted to constantly stress, one of the things he said that I liked the most was he said, God never gets tired of forgiving us. We often get tired of asking him to forgive us. And the world needs his mercy. There's so much violence. There's so much sin. We need to know that God is someone we can return to once we repent of those sins. The Pope was also very clear to those of us in the clergy about saying we have to be close to the people. He said, you have to have the odor of the sheep on your clothing. That's good advice for, not only for clergy, but for politicians. You can't lead people unless you know them, and you can't know them unless you are with them. So these kinds of messages, I think that these are not just things he said, these are themes that shaped his whole approach to the papacy, and these were certainly and will remain good for the church. At the same time, we can't deny the fact that this has been a papacy of confusion. And it's not a judgment on him. It's just looking at the impact on the faithful. Both of you and I mean, we're interacting with people around the country, around the world every day. And it's undeniable. People have, how many times they come to us, they call us, they're scratching their heads. What in the world did the Pope just say? What does that mean? There were confusion about the approach of the church to marriage and human sexuality, the LGBTQ community. And it's not just things that the Pope has said, but people that he has brought close to him. There's Father James Martin, who was just absolutely a disgrace to the priesthood, and you've got appointments that he has made to various Vatican offices of some people that they don't even believe some of the things the church teaches. It's very confusing, very disheartening to people who are making sacrifices every day to live this faith, to pass this faith along to their children, and then they end up getting confused. So it's just the fact. There's no judgment here on him. but we are going to look for some healing and some clarity from the next pope, and I think we will get that. I think all the cardinals who will be voting for the new pope see the same thing that we see, and I think a lot of them want to correct it.
That's a really great point. Obviously, Francis reshaped the College of Cardinals. He appointed a lot of them, I think about 3/4 if I did my math right. So he has a big imprint on that, but it does seem like the Cardinals understand some of the confusion, some of the frustration in the church. What do you think they'll be thinking about as they go through that process of picking the next Holy Father?
Well, there's a lot of considerations. Geography is certainly a factor. I'd love to see a pope from Africa. A lot of people have been saying that the church is thriving there, and a lot of the African cardinals just have a very beautiful, clear, direct way of teaching the faith, and I think we need that. We need that in the church. We need it in politics. The kind of straight talk we get from President Trump, we need that in the pulpit too. Geography, age, they want to go for someone younger who's going to be in for a while. Pope John Paul II was 58 when he was elected. Who knows? These cardinals have a lot of thinking and praying and deliberating to do, and I think that's a good subject for our viewers to pray about over these coming days, really for wisdom on these cardinals. They have a heavy responsibility. And they haven't gotten together all that much as an overall group, so I don't know how well they all know each other. Hopefully they've been making efforts to keep in touch with one another in the meantime, but now they have a serious duty to choose from among their ranks the one who will be the next pope.
Not amazing. Yeah.
And so, Frank, from what I understand from you earlier, in this hopefully 2 or 3 week span that it takes to choose another pope, hopefully it won't be longer than that, but the business of the church is halted for the most part, right?
Yes, it's a very interesting thing. We do not experience this in our American politics. We don't have an interregnum, as it's called, between presidents, where the office is empty. But we do have that in the Catholic Church. So not only are papal decisions obviously put on hold, but all decisions of all Vatican agencies are likewise literally frozen. No official decisions can be made or documents put out or anything like that until the new pope is in place. And in fact, all those personnel decisions, everyone who heads up Vatican agencies, they're going to have to see whether they still have their positions or if the new pope wants to replace them. So it is a very significant moment right now. And that's why, the church is very hierarchical, right? It's very different from our American system of politics.
That's a great point. Frank, I want to just ask a little bit about President Trump's relationship with Catholics. Obviously, he made lots of inroads, made lots of efforts. The Catholic Church and the Republican Party have found lots of, certainly at the people's level, a lot of intersection, even though sometimes the leadership was at loggerheads with President Trump. What does the future of politics in America look like with the Catholic Church? Is the evolution that Donald Trump started going to continue, you think?
I have advocated very strongly in my own relationship with the Vatican on behalf of President Trump and his policies. You mentioned I was co-chair of Pro-Life Voices for Trump in the 2020 cycle. There were some at the Vatican that didn't like that. And I said to them very directly and very persistently, this man is the best friend that the Catholic Church has in public life, even though he himself is not Catholic. He's defending the freedom of the church. He's defending positions of the church that are under attack. Even on immigration, President Trump's policies are much closer to what the Catechism says about immigration than what some bishops say, who are basically of the open borders. Every migrant is an encounter with Christ sort of way of thinking. So I think that what has happened in American politics right now, the public has spoken very clearly, loud and clear. And the good news is that so many of those who went into the voting booth in November are sitting in the pews every Sunday. So in other words, I'm saying that the wave that we have seen, a wave of common sense, a wave of rejecting the woke agenda, a wave of real change, I think now is going to overflow into the church as we choose a new pope. So the pope is not democratically elected among the people, but that doesn't mean that the people don't have a voice. voice. And I think we have to raise that voice, kind of President Trump style, let's let our pastors know where we stand. Let's put it in their faces. Obviously, always with respect, with unity with the church, but nevertheless with a clear honesty and transparency. It's a healthy family when you're able to air your differences instead of pretending that they don't exist. And I find that in the church today, in the Catholic community, very often we're just trying to find the easy way. Let's not cause any disruption or disloyalty. No, speak your mind. And I think that's the kind of change we need to see.
That's good advice.
I think that is just great universal advice. And as always, it came from you, Father Frank Pavone. We love having you on this show. Thank you so much for your wisdom on this.
Thanks. Blessings to you both.
You as well,
Same
sir.
to you. All right, everybody. We have one more segment after this commercial break, so we'll be back on the other side. Welcome back, everybody. Before we dive into a few more news stories before we head out for the evening, John, I'm just kind of one of these fact fiends, and I love looking into processes. And even though I'm not Catholic, I found it fascinating what I learned about the process of choosing a pope, particularly at the end when there is the black smoke or white smoke. I had no idea how scientific it is. For black smoke, they use a cartridge of potassium perchlorate with anthracene and sulfur, and then for white smoke, it's potassium chlorate with lactose and chloroform, and they send that up. They literally send out smoke signals. I think they said that they will also ring a bell if the Pope has been chosen, just for extra confirmation. But this is a really interesting process. It's centuries old, and hopefully in 2 weeks the process will be done. But how long do you think it'll take this time around? Because this time, I don't know. It seems like, especially with how what we were just talking about with Frank Pavone, about how some Catholics feel about Pope Francis, that it might be a little rickety getting back to someone more traditional.
Yeah, listen, this is a big moment for the church. Francis made a lot of changes. He grew the church, but he also grew the divisions in the church. And I think at the end of the day, the opportunity here is for the cardinals to find a path that says, how can we bring us closer together? How can we make sure the church is more unified in its doctrine and in its sentiments, and at the same time keep growing? The growth areas of Africa, the Philippines are very exciting when you're inside the church. You hear about it all the time. Perhaps they pick one of the very strong leaders there. Or if they want to take a tilt back towards old history, maybe they go back to Europe for a while and bring a more conservative prelate there. But this one is going to have a significant impact. We knew Francis was a transformational figure, but where the church goes from here, it's really at a crossroads and what path it's going to pick. And it's going to be fascinating to see what the cardinals come up with in their deliberations.
Absolutely. Speaking of fascinating, what these big box retail executives are going to talk to with President Trump about, they are obviously very concerned about the tariff repercussions for them because they import a ton of goods that go out from Walmart, Home Depot, a lot of these big chain stores. Do you think this is going to be a good meeting, productive? What do you think they're going to say to the president? Yeah,
listen, I think it's good for this point. Donald Trump, is often portrayed in the media. He doesn't listen anyway. He's just doing his own thing. He's always absorbing information. And he's going to learn from these big box stores because he knows that they are a major touch point with the American people. And what they're going through will ultimately translate down or be pushed down to the American people. So he wants to get ahead of it, not only in messaging, but to see if there are some unique ways that he can intervene. One of the early things that he has is, what countries are we going to put first in terms of getting deals? Well, the countries that do textiles have a profound effect on the Walmarts of the world. The countries that provide electronics have a big effect on places like Best Buy or Home Depot or Lowe's. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he's even looking for advice about where do I start? What do you need first to have the lowest impact on the American shopper? But the fact that the president's listening and talking and engaging, that's a positive thing for the American people.
Absolutely. All right, we got to get to this crazy story out of New Mexico. This judge who had been on the bench for 12 or 13 years, abruptly resigned, didn't give a reason, but there was an illegal Tren de Aragua gang member arrested in his house. This is terrifying, John.
Yeah, he was actually living in the guest house of the judge at the behest of the judge's wife. It's really unclear what the ultimate outcome of this is. We do know that the federal law enforcement went there. They arrested this man. They've alleged that he is a Tren de Aragua gang member. The judge has been silent on this issue, but he has resigned. He resigned a few days after the appearance at his home by ICE and federal authorities. So it's a head scratcher. The photos are weird. I don't know what to make of it, but I bet you we're going to learn more, just like we've learned more about Garcia and others. You know, as time goes on, we get more documents, we get more information. There's probably a backstory that we don't know. Quickly in California, Steve Hilton for governor. That was a big moment, huh?
Yeah, you know, this could be a guy who could bring folks together. He's been on Fox News, so that might actually be a blight on his record when it comes to, you know, Democrats, but you never know. He's got a great personality. He loves this state. He's got a British accent. We know people in California love to bring on outsiders, so you just never know. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thanks so much for being here. We'll be back here tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern.